how can we make this accessible by allowing them to own those keys, hold those keys, but have a backup system. So we move towards identity and biometrics as a way to accomplish that.
As blockchain technology progresses, safety and security of private data becomes very critical. There is a lot of fear around losing private keys, specifically self-sovereignty in the decentralized blockchain world. Vendible is committed to solving the confidentiality and on-chain privacy concerns associated with payment systems, and they're driven to making DeFi accessible for everyone. Vendible is a fully compliant DeFi enterprise platform empowering frictionless trade and financial inclusivity. To discuss the venture, we have Doug with us today. Doug is the founder and CEO of Vendible. He has led product teams and has been working on global sustainability solutions for a considerable time now. Welcome to CuratedX, Doug. We are stoked to have you with us today and really look forward to an enriching interaction.
Yes, thanks for having me. And that was a wonderful introduction. I appreciate that. That was a really good overview of what we're working on.
Thank you. So just to get the ball rolling, Doug, I think it's very crucial to capture the attention of crypto natives and the new investors in the space who are very cautious and skeptical of the funds and also losing their keys. So if you can give us a rundown of what Vendible is and how the idea of venturing into Vendible came to you.
I was working in process improvement and energy transfer systems and sustainability. And I stumbled into Bitcoin a very long time ago. And I began looking at it from a scalability perspective to see what would it take for this type of technology to scale. I didn't think it was going to. And so I left it for a while. And then proof of stake came along, which is a new consensus mechanism. And I got really excited because there was now a way for people to come to an agreement in this, decentralized ledger without having to compete. And that meant that you could have agreement without a lot of competition, and it also drives down energy costs and speeds up transactions. So I fell into a couple of open source work groups. They were early DAOs before really, big into DAOs. And I was fascinated by the technology that was being put forth. And I knew there was a potential to help a lot of people, but there was a lot of stumbling blocks to adoption because it's so incredibly technical. And so Vendible really came about as a way to solve some problems that I saw around adoption. So, there's Bitcoin works great because it was designed for transactions between people you don't know and people you don't trust. Right. And it works beautifully, and we now see there's a lot of interest in the space, but really 8 to 12% of people can really own their own keys, jump into this world and interact on a daily basis. And keys was a big issue for me around self-sovereignty. I love the idea of being self-sovereign, not having to rely on other parties to manage my assets. But at the same time, there's a tremendous risk with being self-sovereign, because if I lose those keys, then where do I go from there when I can't retrieve my assets? And so one of the early core goals was how can we remain sovereign, so still fully in control of our assets, but there are backups like we would know today, so that if I do make mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes, and because I've spoken with CEOs of other wallet companies, And it's heartbreaking for them because on a daily basis, people will reach out to the customer service department and they will say, I sent this transaction to the wrong address. Can I get this back? Well, you can't. And so they ask, well, where is it? And they just say it's gone. Because now no one controls that asset. Or I lost my phone and I need to get access back. So, well, where's your seed phrase? Well, I didn't write it down. And then you have to break it to these people that they're never going to get these assets back. And so there's, for early adopters, we take on risk because we see a potential reward. But then there's the 80 to 90% of everyone else who's not willing to take on that risk, even if there is a reward, because they don't feel like it outweighs the potential, ruin of their livelihood. So, first for us was, how can we make this accessible by allowing them to own those keys, hold those keys, but have a backup system. So we moved towards identity and biometrics as a way to accomplish that.
Absolutely. And I do believe that I think that is one very important piece that needs to be fixed to get the masses on board and to make that transition from Web 2 to Web 3 comfortable and easy for a lot of us. Because in Web 2, we do understand, okay, if you're dealing with a bank, you lose your password, you can reset your password, and a lot of other things as backup are available to you. But here, you are in control of your private keys. And if you lose them, you end up losing everything. So I think that's a very critical gap that is being fulfilled. Moving on from there, in recent times, we've also seen a significant number of layer ones and layer twos gaining a lot of traction and hype. And as we know, a robust layer one ecosystem heavily impacts the long-term success of the project building on it. So how did you zero down on leveraging and building on the algorand network? And how does this strengthen the footprints of Vendible?
So it was pretty easy for me. Because I came from a research background, I was diving into research papers mainly around consensus and consensus models. I was not only really curious about how everybody was deciding how they would agree without trusting each other, but what were the possibilities for that consensus mechanism, not just when it starts, but years down the road. And in 2018, I came across, the algorand white paper when it came out. And there was a new consensus mechanism put forth with these verifiable random functions in a three-step process that would allow all of essentially the shareholders, anybody who had a stake in Algorand, to come to consensus without exposing who had made that consensus until the block was formed. And a couple key things about that. Number one, it's very distributed in theory, and as you grow out, it becomes massively distributed because anybody who has one algo can participate in that. Yeah. And then because of the randomness, each block is final. So you can think of, in Bitcoin or Ethereum, you have a block and it's confirmed, but then you need to wait multiple blocks to make sure that nothing happens and it settles. But with Algorand, each block is final. And for me, that meant we could look at very high throughput. So a lot of transactions per second. I think right now they're at 6,000 per second, which is extremely fast. Every block is final. So every 4 seconds, those transactions are confirmed and extremely low cost. And because it's proof of stake, we're not competing really against one another. We're working together in a cooperative way to come to consensus. And so, energy consumption is low, so the price is low. And for me, if you were going to have businesses adopt a blockchain network, these are the things that you would need, because this is what they're used to. They're not, no business is used to, sending a payment and waiting 5 minutes for some confirmation back, because by that time, they're used to millions of transactions a day at the highest, corporate level. So that would not be tenable. So yeah, that's I fell in quite early with the team after they formed, and began, talking through our model with them, and how we wanted that to play out on the algorand network. This was actually originally constructed on Quorum. So that's a closed permission network, and it was done so to protect identity, because it's very simple in closed networks to say who can see what, because this was another critical issue in networks, and that in an open network like Ethereum or Algorand, when I send you a payment, you now see my public address. And when you know my public address, you know the state and the activity of all my assets. Not just right now, but everything before that. You could come back a year from now and you could see all of my activity. There's no other payment network that works like this. And if we go back to that 80 to 90% of people, they will not, they won't want this. Like, this is another risk reward for them that it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
If I had all of my funds in this open network, and at any point in time when I send a payment, you can just see right into my bank account. Nobody wants that. And so, so it was built privacy first, around the person's identity. And as Algorand matured, the talks began to accelerate. And then we received a grant in 2021 to take what we had done in this closed permission system and then translate that to the open network and begin to do all the really hard work of, how can you have privacy, security, but also at the same time, compliance systems, all out in the open at the same time. And so, yeah, it's really been what started in 2017 has evolved quite a lot, but I think we're in a really good place now with our solution.
Definitely. And I think it is very important, the pointers that you shared, ensuring that it is cost effective, it maintains that level of privacy, compliance checks, and also the overarching objective of letting scalability overpower it. It's very, very important, because as the ecosystem grows, it is important to have quicker transaction per seconds, as well as a scalable model which helps you grow as the ecosystem grows with it. So just talking on those lines itself, we understand that the ecosystem is growing, the number of protocols and projects that are they're also trying to catch up to solve multiple problems in this ecosystem. And in terms of protocols working on solving similar problems as Vendible, how does Vendible stand out and differentiate itself from other similar solution providers?
Yeah, so there are now multiple projects that are focused around both identity and data. There have been many identity projects over the past 5 to 6 years that are coming out, and they all revolve around self-sovereign identity. So this idea that you are in full control of your identity. Polygon just launched Polygon Id, which is both a identity and privacy solution. They're using a lot of the same zero knowledge proofs that we do in their setups. Where we begin to move away from in that self-sovereign model are a few things. Number one, in self-sovereign models, I can create different personas. So I can create my own persona with these identity attributes, or a different one for here. So if I'm, if I need a identity persona for my business and I need an identity persona for my gaming, I can create these with different credentials, and that's great. And the claims are verified, but the data is really just all it is a stamp that says yes, this was verified. So with Vendible, we wanted to move away from that much control over the changing appearances of an identity. We needed one anchor for your identity, and then you could begin to connect in these data points around it. So what we've done is that DID, the Decentralized Identifier, it's a document that makes claims to data that's been verified. What we do is when that data is actually verified, it's sent back to the wallet. The wallet encrypts it and stores it in decentralized data. And then that DID document is created, and you now own the access to that data. So rather than the data just not being there present, it's now accessible, and you're the only one in control. You can begin to share this with others if you choose. So friends, families, businesses, applications as well. So management of the identity and management of data is a differentiator. And then on the other side, we go back to the keys again, because in self-sovereignty, you're owning all the keys to your identity. And if you lose that, then you lose access to maybe signing privileged applications. And now you can't access this application that you've been using for months or years. And so with us, we use biometrics. So we have a process with our partners called known faces. So when you go through our system, it actually recognizes your face. And if you lose your seed phrase, there is a process where you can go back through, we recognize your face, and there's a threshold encryption setup that we use with zero knowledge proofs. So we create this circuit where you sign and Vendible signs and our validator signs all together. So we have this bundled proof. And if you do lose access, then with that threshold encryption, Vendible and the validator can sign, and then we can rekey your wallet in such a way that you have a new seed phrase, but Vendible, neither Vendible or the validator ever really got to see what your actual seed phrase was. So you're still in full sovereign control. It's still all yours, but there's a backup system in place to protect you.
I think that was very fascinating to hear how you're maintaining that, or how you're essentially managing identity, as well as ensuring that the data is also managed well. Just taking on from there, I think there's also one very important factor of us having a strong community. Because I believe in Web3, it is critical to realize and understand the role and importance of a strong community in growing a project. So I would like to understand from you the significance that is being laid on building this community and networking for Vendible.
Yeah, we've actually gotten pushback on our desire to grow a community, which is odd because we do know that communities often do equal a strong project. But basically, we've gotten pushback because we're building essentially a two-sided marketplace where we have a wallet and we want to grow users inside of this wallet. And then also we have tools that we want to build for all these developers so that they can also port in identity and data and privacy into their applications. And so often it seems, quite daunting to do this, but really what we're trying to do is, because our wallet is not really necessarily a wallet, we call it a wallet application. So it does house your keys, but it also houses your identity, access to data, and we're moving towards community building inside of the wallet with being able to create your own personas, a social marketplace where you can begin to discuss projects that are, built inside of the wallet, and create community inside of there where you connect with friends and families and DAOs, and have voting systems and encrypted messaging, so that we can work together with, and there's a lot of incentives that we're going to have both in the wallet and external for sharing and working with Vendible, because we want this to be an open build. So there's a lot of initiatives that we have coming up for people to get involved, anywhere from marketing to sales to actual development. This is really, we want this to be theirs, not ours. But I think it's critical in this space that you don't go alone, and that there's a large, really real engaged community behind you, not just those who are waiting on the price, the token to come out and the price to raise, and then they sell and then move to the next project. That's not really what we're looking for. You can get a lot of traction early that way, but if you want to be sustainable, people need to feel like it's a place they belong, and that there's activity for them there, and they can get value out because they've engaged with your and your product.
Absolutely. And I think that is the crux of as we get more decentralized and get deeper into Web3, where it should be an open network essentially, where the community has its strong belief in the project and they're fully committed and involved in growing that project themselves rather than the team. Or definitely that is important, but as the ecosystem expands or as the project grows, you really want the community to lead the way forward. Talking about the other side now, apart from community, I think fundraising is also a strong factor that reflects strong belief by VCs and institutional investors, and also gives a headway for growing and expanding the project in the right direction. So I'd like to congratulate you, first of all, on your token seed of $1.7 million, and would love to know more about the fundraise. How are the funds being deployed? And as a follow-up to that, how do you envision the future of Vendible in the coming times?
Yes, we made it a point to go out and source funding partners who have deep knowledge in the space. So Borderless Capital, Vixen, NGC, Big Brain, Woodstock Fund. These are experts in helping these new types of businesses find their communities, create the right tokenomics so that they can scale. And it wasn't just about the money, it's really about the knowledge base there, the connections, being able to work with their partner companies to look to see how we can integrate and work together. So there's a lot of synergy that comes with it besides just the investment dollars. For us, it's allowed us to bring in a really well-balanced team of very experienced individuals that we are tasking them with some very difficult technical challenges because a lot of what we are producing hasn't been done before. There's multiple research papers that we're going to have peer reviewed and released around our encryption system. And then on the other side, for our marketing team and our community team, the very, very tough challenge of describing Vendible in a short 2 sentences. It's something that I've not been able to do, and so having them digest everything, learn everything, and then begin to turn around and start to communicate that out is a very tough challenge. And so I think that they are starting to own that process, and it's helping us quite a bit.
Definitely. I think those are very important pointers as well as you grow. And I think you do come across different challenges, and that's how you overcome these challenges and move on to the path of success. So now moving on to your view on the larger landscape. So with umpteen use cases being developed using the blockchain technology, ranging from custody solutions to L1s, DeFi, NFT, gaming, metaverse, and so much more. So which segment are you most bullish on in the next few years?
Well, gaming will most certainly bring in a lot of users early on. There's just too many overlays between communities and the ability for games who traditionally have assets inside of them to switch on actual ownership of those assets, rather than it just being something that's earned and it's like in the game you feel important. Now you can earn that, and there's some value behind that that carries on. And even if you decide to not play that game anymore, those can go into a marketplace, and so there's value there that's being created just from you playing the game. And I think that gamers are early adopters of technology, and so we'll see a lot of use there. We're going to see, oddly enough, a lot of back-end processes for corporations. So 65% of all CIOs in the Fortune 500 are either actively working on blockchain projects or they are architecting blockchain projects. That's a lot at a very high level. The problem there is that you won't see any of these built on an Ethereum or a Polygon or directly on an algorand because of the like what we spoke about before, because they're open and they can't expose their public accounts to the trade partners. So they're all being built on closed permission systems. And that's another that was another core goal for Vendible, is that we wanted to give them an option to build on an open network where right now they can't, because we have to start asking questions whether that's actually Web3. If there's a closed group of nodes that control the movement of all these assets, do you actually really own anything in that system? And so I'm not going to answer that directly, but I would like to just put forth a different model, and then beyond that, there will be new connection systems made between people. The ability to go peer-to-peer without having to move through another party. I hope after gaming, that's really the use cases that we see coming up, where real connections are made across the globe that are meaningful and help one another. And so I follow some of those projects to see, how they're developing and, how they can benefit everyone.
Definitely. And just piggybacking on the thought, I think that we have such a strong and such a large community of gamers that it's going to be interesting to see how we onboard all of them on the web in the Web3 space, and that how the transition happens. And I think I really agree with that point of having those real connections. We're still waiting to see how metaverse transforms itself into just not being a virtual reality, but being able to develop those real connections in this virtual metaverse is going to be something that we really look forward to as well. So before we wrap up, there is one question I'd really like your opinion on. There is still a large chunk of the population which is unsure of the digital asset space and still uncertain of investing their money, and in these bear markets especially, it makes it even more challenging for non-crypto natives to survive these markets. So what advice or suggestion would you give to people who are new to the space or still exploring entering into it?
You should have 6 months to a year's savings of expenses in the bank that you don't touch, that gives you safety and security before you consider investing in a highly volatile market. That way you can detach emotions from your investing, and knowing that regardless of where the needle moves, you can be okay. I can't stress that enough for people's health and well-being. I've seen, I have built through, the crypto winter in 2018, and we're seeing, what is a recession coming upon us. This bear market, given the current economic and political climate, could last a long time. Yeah. And especially if you're in like NFT investing, it could be very difficult because you've almost lost twice. When the NFT prices crashed a few weeks ago, both the asset itself and the asset that you would get out if you were to pull out both lost. And so it was like almost like a double loss for these investors. And so my best advice is, if you don't have that reserve, that security, get that first. And while you're building that up, educate yourself on the space and look at the trends so that you can make really well-informed decisions. Because what you don't want to do is just see something that is flashy and looks fun and jump in without really knowing like the fundamentals behind this. What is the technology that's driving this? Who's the team? Also is extremely important. I know I came from groups where you didn't know the members of the team. No, these are early DAOs, and a lot of them focused on privacy. But I was in the space for 9 months in one of these groups before I really even engaged, because I needed to know, okay, I don't know anything about you. It's just an avatar and a name. I need to understand about you and your motivations and where do you see this going. And so if you're looking at projects where you don't know anything about the team, you really have to put in even more work and time. These aren't decisions you should be making over a weekend. You should really get, you should jump into the community and see, what is the activity level there, and who's actually working and what is happening before you commit yourself to it. That would be my best advice.
I think that's a very useful piece of advice for a lot of new entrants and also existing ones. I think everybody needs a refresher. Okay, we're in bear markets, it's a turmoil here and there. Where do we go from here? Or how do we foresee the future? When do the markets reverse, or what happens? I think that that's very important as well. So on that note, I would really like to thank you for such an insightful discussion today. There is definitely massive potential in growing the ecosystem, and Vendible is hitting the nail on the head by addressing a real problem of compromised privacy. They're committed to make DeFi accessible for everyone, and we wish all the success to the Vendible team. Thank you once again, Doug, for being a part of CuratedX and sharing these key insights with us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you.